this class is understanding the band's language. And so, just so you know you're in the right place, which I'm sure y'all know. Musicians have their own language, and at times volunteers don't understand the language of the band used to communicate. Sometimes we as leaders need refreshers or don't know the terms ourselves. This session will look at some key terms that can be used in working with praise bands to quickly and effectively communicate in rehearsals and or worship services. So one of the things that we basically start with is something called the number system. Are you guys familiar with the number system? It's also affectionately termed the Nashville number system.
We weren't trained on it.
Cool.
No.
Yeah.
You're going to get it today
Okay.
because you know music theory.
Okay.
So every key is relative to every other key. So think about your major keys, C all the way to B in the middle there. So if I'm in the key of C, and I've had a board to write this, so pretend there's a board, but I think you can do it in your mind. If I'm in the key of C, whatever key I'm in, that tonic is 1. And then you count up to 7. And so when you hear guys in the band saying, I can play the 1 chord, play the 4 chord, go back to your Roman numerals.
Right.
Yeah, we got it.
Oh,
Yeah, we got that.
1, 4, and 5 are typically major.
Yes.
2, 3, and 6 are typically minor. So there are guys who will write charts, and all they will do is write the number. If they've changed it from Roman numerals to actual numbers. So 1, 4, 6, 5, and instead of like you saw my chart.
So they do that so you do it in whatever key you want.
Exactly right.
Okay.
It allows them to move quickly. So I'm kind of like I like to put it in the right key. So we saw this yesterday. So they would put 6, 4, 1, 6, 4, 1. And then I say, yeah, I'm not really feeling it today, guys. Do you think we could do this down in E flat? No problem. So they have to know music theory too, even if they don't think they know it. They kind of do know it a little bit, and it helps out in so many situations. I've got a young associate. He's 26, and he knows the number system really, really well. And so he's playing, and maybe he wants to add an instrumental section to the song. And so in rehearsal on the microphone, he's like, "Okay, guys, on this instrumental section, let's go 4, 5, 6, 1. Ready? Here we go. 4." And then 2 seconds before we change, 1, okay, 6, and we follow him. And then there's also like my piano player that I had for a long time. He was trained in jazz, classical, all this kind of stuff, but he really knew the number system well. He would call songs what they were. So that's a 45, 61. Put them together.
Okay.
It's like, oh, okay, I get it. 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 5, 6, 1 till the end.
Yes.
So the note in the Roman numeral system, we had the capital letters and the lowercase letters to notate one was major and minor. In this system, you just remember, okay, 2, 3, and 6, 1, 4, and 5. You kind of group those together. If you teach your band that in the modern setting, it's kind of a easy grab for them, and then it helps you to communicate. So some churches, all their charts are just numbers. I like chords. I like to. Yeah, I want to teach my band, because guitar players can play in patterns, and so I want to teach my band guys an A chord is an A, C sharp A. What's an A? What's a 1? Well, what key are we in? I don't want them just to know because of muscle memory what that is. I want them to actually know the theory behind the chord. The next thing I teach, which this is going to be super easy, is the circle of fifths. And so that helps them to identify what key it is, how many sharps or flats, and what are sharps and flats and the orders of that. And so the number guys don't necessarily, depending on their training, have that knowledge. And so if I'm stretching my team a little bit, I'm getting on the board, I'm drawing them, every good boy does fine always, beat, greatest common factor, and telling them how to find those sharps and flats. Since you guys are well versed in it, we're going to move on to actual words that you would use in a rehearsal setting. So one of the words that's very common in modern music is building. And it means what it sounds like, except there's so many different ways that you can build. And you saw some of those ways yesterday. If you're thinking about that first song that we did, and I'm going back to the bridge, it goes real soft and quiet. Everything thins out, which is another word that helps describe the softer section. Hey, let's thin out, right? That's great. No, they're good. So as he was going on, a very classic Hillsong United way of building is that you drop out completely, and then you start with maybe a quarter build, and then you go to eighth build on the next time through, and then you go to a 16th build, and then 30-second snare. So everything is always like, musically crescendoing to a point, and then they can do one of two things at that point. They can then go to what we call like a full band sound and just go, crazy like we're doing sometimes. Or they can do like a deceptive build and then hit the downbeat of that next measure and let it air out and let the vocals run. So that's kind of some of the ways that these builds can happen. Because we've heard so many builds that way over time. I mean, the eighth note is your friend. There's just something about it. It gets you excited that something's about to happen. So don't be afraid to use the eighth note, but also don't be afraid to experiment with different kinds of builds. So when we were in the studio with that first song, we were like, how can we create a build that's not choo-choo-choo-choo? And the drummer was just ridiculous. And so he did what we would call a series of tom work. And so tom work can be different things. It can be kind of this busy, and that can happen on verses too. Or sometimes it's been described as like African and tribal. It's like, give me that African tribal beat, one that just kind of, whatever they feel in that, it doesn't have to be like this perfect beat, but they kind of communicate something to them. I need something kind of tribal here, okay, yeah. Or I'll talk about it sometimes because they'll include the snare sound into that build. So I'll say, give me some tom work, tom building with a snare. And when you add that snare, it just adds that extra crack, that pop of like intensity. So the toms, they have that range in a certain K in your ear, and it's kind of that lower, warm range. But when I add the crack, it just takes me to the next level. So sometimes guys, okay, give me tom work on that first or that second line of the bridge. The third line, give me tom work, but add a snare. And that adds a little bit more intensity. Okay, the fourth line, go nuts. Give me something, like whatever's gonna be characteristic to the song. Another term that drummers, easy to hear, you know what it means, you just maybe heard it called four on the floor. Four on the floor. Now that's a do, 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 do. You've heard it at rock concerts. One that helps everybody get their hands together. There's so many songs in modern music that either do four on the floor the whole song, and that's just the nature of the song, or they save it for certain parts that they want to be intense, like sometimes bridges, and maybe like they don't do it on the verse, but they do it on the chorus. So four on the floor is adding energy. So you're going to hear things a lot of times on recordings, and really that's the best way to learn what all these things mean, listening deep into those recordings. Sometimes at the very beginning of the song, the only thing that happens is that do, 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 do. And again, there's something about it. It's like a heartbeat, but it's like adding this anticipation of something that's about to happen. I always tell the drummer, y'all heard me tell him yesterday, you're always on. And so if there's a section where everything bows out, I don't want the drummer just sitting there with his sticks. So I tell him, give me some swells, give me some cymbal work. And when I tell him cymbal work, in his mind, he knows, okay, he's doing little shimmers here, maybe a swell here, maybe some like ding, 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 ding on the ride cymbals, or even any of the cymbals.
Is it typically, cymbal work, is it typically softer work?
Typically softer work,
Okay.
yep. And it's typically going to be in a section on a recording. Sometimes they wouldn't do anything because there's just something that's more, it's all compressed and very in your face on the recording. So in live setting, especially for people who don't have clicks, the cymbal work not only works as atmosphere creating, but it's also keeping a little bit of tempo. And so it's just something my drummer, he knows. And sometimes he forgets. I'm like, and so he'll add the cymbal work, you know, and I think that's super helpful. Bass guitar, you heard me say it yesterday, but his number one job is to keep his eye on the kick of the drum. And there's different philosophies. Some people, I've just seen more and more as music has gone on, the bass player's not just doing his own thing, but the bass player, when he is synced up with that kick, there's something about when it hits at the same time with the same rhythms. Doom, 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 doom. Even if the bass player's doing do, 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 he's accenting that do, 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 do. It just drives. And then there's songs that aren't that straight drive. Do, 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 do. When those things hit together, it pushes and like really locks in the sound of your band. So, other techniques that the bass player uses, he's going to rarely use a slap in this, but that's the Seinfeld thing you hear. That's more in the jazz world. He's going to, hey, can you do eighth notes with the drummer? Okay, the verse is whole notes, you know. Another word for whole note in this world, and we'll talk about this later too, is called the diamond. So you see the diamond?
We learned that yesterday. It was like a one. Okay.
Yeah.
Diamond.
And it's a whole note, or like sometimes a measure will have two chord changes in it. One will be one and one will be three. And I'll say, give me a diamond on both those. So it's really two half notes. You know, it's just the full duration of whatever that chord is.
Yes, question. So you want your bass player always as close to the drums as possible, or what?
Yep. If he's a right-handed bass player, which typically most of them are, if you have the ability to, you kind of want him where his face is most comfortable. It's a personal decision. Sometimes they're looking at their neck more, and so if the kick's right there, they're kind of doing this. Our bass is on the other side, and his music's right here, and he's pretty good. He doesn't have to like look at his neck, so he's kind of doing this, got music and back and forth, see the kick. The more they play together, the less he's got to look, the more he just knows. You know, and you know, good thing about worship songs is you repeat them, and typically the foundation is not changing, and those guys are setting the foundation for the whole song. So yeah, I like to have the bass player goes close to the drummer. I like to have the electric players on both sides. This is my personal. One lead guitar over here, one rhythm guitar over here, and then I like to have keys on the opposite side of the drums. But sometimes you're in a pit and you can be all together. That's cool too. But my choir's right in the middle, and I like to have the choir front and center. Let's go. They're on risers that they can literally step down and be on the platform. You know, so we're really close to the people.
So if your choir's in the middle, like it was here,
Yep.
choir's in the middle, where should that would be set up?
Choir right here. So my piano and my keys player is over here. The piano is a big Steinway, it's just like that.
Okay.
And the keys are on a little bit of a rise above behind the piano. And he's got a big double stack keyboard. It's like from 10 years ago. Now everybody has like a little red Nord keyboard that makes all your sounds. And then I have an electric guitar player that's tucked in, kind of like you're doing piano recital, or vocal recital. He's right there, and he's got his pedal boards right there. So all of them have sight lines to me and sight lines to the congregation. Nobody's covering each other up. And then I stand right here in the middle with my guitar. Praise team of like 4 people, 2 over here, 2 over here. Over here, we have the drums, kind of where that organ is, and they're in a big cage. Bass player on the left side of the drums, and the electric guitar player is sort of, you know, to the corner of the drums, but right in front of him, but a little off center. And then that's kind of how we would go together. And then sometimes I'll have an additional guitar player if I don't want to play acoustic on that Sunday morning. I just want to leave my microphone, and they'll stand right on the inside of that electric guitar player. And then I have literally like those winger risers, but we built some wooden platforms that have 2 more steps. So that, and then those winger risers go up really high and give us a little bit more room. We're kind of limited in some of the things we can do, but my choir kept growing. I was like, we can't go out, got to go up.
So would you always put them in a shell or a cage, the drums, as opposed to being, like you said, they want to hit.
Right.
And if they don't have that around, they're gonna have to back down, they won't
Right.
enjoy that.
Right. I would say yes. If you can put them in a cage, and you need to research, and in my opinion, the best cage you can get, the better. Because number one, if you get the one from Clear Sonic, you have to put it together, and you have to we've makeshifted ours, and we actually have a riser that has wheels on it because we wanted to keep it mobile. That's a big clunky riser, and we've had an engineer who built a pole that helped us to open and close the door. They make custom ones. I know it's a lot of money. It really is. I mean, I really want one so bad. I'm just like, oh man, because the sound coverage is a little bit better because it's fully enclosed. It comes with its own door. It comes with lights already inside it, so you don't have to do. So we've had to add all those things in there. I'm like, well, if we add all the money that we spent makeshifting this into what we needed, because it looked like the biggest purchase was saving money, we probably could have got the custom kits, and the custom kits also come with like a rounded front, and there's no, so you can see. There's just something about, especially our drummer, there's something about seeing him. We get so many comments about how people love watching him worship, because he's all in. He goes all the time. So I would recommend putting him in there. If not, there's ways to get around it. But if you have a choir, like we have, and you have the drums over there, good luck hearing the choir. I mean, it's just hard. The drummer would have to play, like Tim was playing yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that just, in the modern worship setting, that just takes away from some of the, I like to be stylistically correct. And if he's doing, that's not stylistically correct with the songs that we're singing. He needs to dig in. So, personal opinions.
Good, that's good.
Everybody's different. And there are some drummers. And they just have the right touch. And they can do it. And you don't feel like you're losing. And if you have one of those guys, praise the Lord, press it. Another thing that bass players will do, especially in some of the faster songs, is what's called picking. And they'll literally take a pick, a really thick one, and they'll play with the pick. So there's a song called Salvation Is Here by Hillsong from years ago, and it's got this. It's like there's no way a bass player could try to do that. I mean, he sort of could, but there's a technique, like when electric guitar players are playing solos, they're not just doing all down strums. They're doing an alternating strum, and it helps them to move really fast. So, bass players do the same technique. Okay, the piano in the modern worship world has a different role from time to time, and a lot of times it's not busy. So I have a guy I served with for lots of years in my previous church, or in my current church. And again, he is classically trained, he's jazz trained, and he can play all 88 notes on every song. I mean, he's just that kind of guy. And he can actually make it work where it's not too different. It sort of morphed our sound into being something different at Kingston, which I was fine with because God gifted us with him. But typically Dino has a hard time, if you know Dino, has a hard time fitting into this mold, but a lot of piano work is arpeggios. So a moving bass line with a arpeggiated, same thing. Maybe it changes one or two notes depending on the chord on the right hand. And so I'll say, hey man, hear that arpeggio on the interlude? I need you to hit that up. And another thing that they do a lot of is called octave themes. So it's typically an octave in your left hand of the bass note, and then the theme, an octave in your right hand. So yesterday, I didn't tell the piano player because there was just so many things going on, but on the chorus of Not Today, there's like this boom, bum, 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 bum. And if I would have had a little bit more time, I would have said, hey, can you play the octave theme on the chorus? Now, in this song, it's tucked away in the back, and so you kind of have to really listen critically to hear it. But as music majors, we're all used to listening critically and giving our critical opinion about what we heard. Octave theme, and you're going to be hard pressed sometimes in certain seasons of music writing to not find a song that doesn't have an octave theme in it. It's pretty prevalent. You heard know the song "This Is Amazing Grace"? So it has that na 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 na. So if I'm in a band and I don't have that synth sound, I want the piano player to go with octaves, and it just gives it there. Or even doubling that piano with the electric guitar, doing the same thing on a single note. Those two themes define the music, and if you've got bass player going and drummer hitting, and maybe a rhythm guitar just doing power chords, which is just a 1 and 5. If you got those things happening, then you get this wall of sound that feels full and like the recording.
I want to ask this, because my piano player is very classically trained, and he likes to know whatever's on the page. So if you get something for praise charge, he feels like he has to get every note that's there.
Yes.
And then you have somebody else that comes in that's maybe not classically trained, but they get this contemporary stuff, and they sit down there and they can make the contemporary stuff sound so much better than this guy that's really good. So that's a good hint for me to suggest him. So.
Yeah, so hey, can you listen deep in the recording? And there's another thing you might get in my resource class I talked about. It's called Worship Piano, and it's by Bob Kauflin. And he is a classically trained musician. Are you familiar with Bob Kauflin? Have you heard of him? You need to read his book, Worship Matters. It's so systematic and theological about worship leadership and working with bands and how to receive thanks when people say great job. I mean, just all kinds of practical tips for him. Kauflin, Kauflin. He was in that group Glad, and he wrote the song "In the First Light of the New Day." So this piano book. So Bob, he had like a goal to learn the piano so well that he could play any song, anytime, no matter what. And so in college, he practiced 4 hours a day, every day for 7 days a week. So I mean, every single day. And after college, people were like, "Man, you're so amazing. Like, I wish I could play like you." And Bob would say, "You can. Just practice every day for 4 hours a day, 7 days a week."
So his book is called what?
Worship Matters. And in the piano book, I know Bob takes that classical mind and trained person, shows them how to survive in a modern setting. And a lot of it is right here. So it's in the middle of the keyboard, sometimes a little bit higher, because also the acoustic guitar is in that range. And so if both people are here the whole time, we deal with y'all right here. Over at the worship lab, we had a guy, and it was just him on the piano, or just him on the guitar. He was the only one in the company. And he never moved from right here. He did some suspensions, some 2s and 4s on the 1 chord and the 5 chord, and the 4 chord and 6 chord. And that was the whole song. But it was just breathtaking. It was so simple. Also, he had an incredible voice, and that helps. That you can be so simple. And that's what modern music's trying to do. They simplify the accompaniment so the voice can be what stands out. Okay, keys. So you've got the piano guy and try to get him reeled in. Then you have the keys guy, and there is a mammoth amount of things that this guy can do. And words that are typically used in the band setting for us, we got to decide if we want pads. And there's different kinds of pads. There's airy pads, and you've heard them kind of a little bit of that sound in them. There's warm pads. Now, if you've ever been to any Hillsong United worship night, between songs, you're going to hear this between every song. And whatever the worship leader is saying, which sometimes they'll speak for a while, sometimes a good 10 minutes, to sort of set the mood and the tone of the service. It's always going to have, and it's rarely going to change very often. Like maybe to the 4, 2 minutes later, I got a guy, and he's got a little bit of gospel background, so he's like, and what happens in those settings, when you're trying to say something, if I'm musical, and that dude is changing all the times, all I'm hearing is like, "Oh, that's a cool change." Oh. And if I'm the worship leader and I'm trying to speak over that, and I'm a man, because guys can't focus on more than one thing at a time, I'm like, "What's it? Could you just play right now? Please."
That would be a warm pad.
That'd be a warm pad sound, or an airy pad, depending on what mood you're trying to set. Airy pad's just gonna sound a little thinner, a little higher in tone. The warm pad, like, just welcomes you in. It's like a warm hug, between songs. So between every song, we've got something going on. There's never a moment of silence. It's like, where am I coming from, and where am I going to? Giving the transition moments. And typically that pad guy, if nobody has been assigned, you're starting the next song, or we need you to come in and drop out of the last song a little earlier so you can get ready to come in on the next song. And that pad player is just playing the glue that's sticking us all together. And I mean, you know this, but like, transitions are so important in worship, to not lose people. You always lose people in transitions. Like, when we get out of this class, there's a transition. And so there's opportunity for people to go, oh, I'm going to go home, or something like that. So if there's something captivating in the transition, then you've captured them to stay. So I'm always thinking about transitions in my later life as a worship pastor.
So who is creating the pad?
So I have a keys player, and he has got a keyboard, and my keyboard player is, he's the kind of guy that takes the manual home, and he reads the manual. And he's learning all the sounds, and he's always experimenting with new sounds. But there's really, depending on what keyboard you get, there's simpler keyboards, and they have only a few settings. And some of them literally say warm pad, or some of them say airy pad. Because it's just like, somebody's looking for something, and they say it, and the creators of the machines are like, well, let's just call it that. So like, great. But there's also combinations of pads. So we have a Roland Phantom 6, and it's a little older, and it's a workstation. You can do anything on that thing. You can spend hours searching through the patches. So we also have a Nord Stage 2, which they don't make those anymore. There's Nord Stage 3 is the next one. It's a very expensive keyboard, but it is amazing. You can have a lot of the keyboards, you click buttons and all the inner workings are happening on the inside. So on the Nord, all the sections are right in front of you. And so there's a piano control section, a pad control section, a strings, and an organ. And you can layer those together, and you can start the intensity. And so one thing I've always had to complain about pianos that have pad sounds on them is the pad is dictated by the piano. So if you start a new chord, it's like the pad starts over. So on the Nord, you can actually adjust the attack of the pad to where it doesn't feel like it starts over. It's like almost like two different instruments playing at the same time without affecting each other. So,
Do you sometimes have a person anticipate the chord because the pad takes so?
yes, and you can set on certain keyboards the attack, which is what that's called. It's like if your keyboard player, his pad is, it's like, can you like quicken your attack on that patch? Can you look and see if there's a way to do that? Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than getting to that chorus, that first chorus of a soft song where everybody drops out and it's just the pad, and he changes, and he's already changed, but it's like the vocal chords already changed, and you're like, oh, come on. It sounds like we're off, but we're not, I promise, keep going. So there's another term called pulse pads. So in lots of more hype music, if you will, there's going to be like this doo, 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 going on inside the pad. So hey, give me some pulse pad there, or something to create some energy. There's synth, and the 80s are coming back, y'all, in worship. Hillsong, Young and Free, all these guys are bringing back this sound, and it's just like that sound that you hear on This Is Amazing Grace. That little kind of fun sound that's happening in a lot of places. So if you have a song like that, hey, can you give me some synth pad there? They'd be like, oh, okay, they know what's up, Electric guitar. So there's all kind of fun terminologies that can be used to describe what they're doing. So, the electric guitar player's going to have a pedal board in front of him, and his pedal board is going to give him some options. And that pedal board typically is going to have, in the basic world of church music, really all you need is a delay pedal, an overdrive pedal, and a reverb pedal and a volume pedal. And I'll explain a little bit about those things. People add more, and that's great. I love that. But your volume pedal can help you control the swells, because there are certain moments in songs that you want the electric guitar player to sneak in. And so you put him in control of that, and really great guitar players I've seen actually do it with their volume knob. But it gives you a nice even. I've seen it swell in and out of choruses, and that adds a nice little touch to that. Your delay pedal, you know the song "Where the Streets Have No Name" by U2. Have you heard that one? It's doing. Do you hear this like? Where the streets have no name. Anyway, I went to a worship conference in California, and they said, everything I learned about worship I learned from a British rock star. That was the name of the class. And it was the idea that when U2 and The Edge started doing that sound, it's called a dotted eighth note delay. When that started happening, it just swept over worship music. And so there were so many songs that had that dun, 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 dun. So that is called dotted eighth note delay, and there's a literal setting on most delay pedals that says dotted eighth note. And then you click the tempo, and you're going. So if you hear something like that, I think that might be dotted eighth note
So
delay.
when you strum a chord, is it going to play that rhythm, or you're playing that rhythm?
So it's going to play that rhythm. You're actually doing.
Okay.
And it's going dun, 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 dun.
Okay.
It's a little bit of like you have to train your brain to go, okay, I'm doing this while it's doing that.
Okay.
Don't listen to that, you know. But there's also the verb. So sometimes, this is kind of funny words, but like sometimes you want whale sounds. I've just heard them funnily described because they sound like that. And they kind of swell in and out of maybe like a prayer time or something like that. They give me some whale sounds during the prayer time. Okay, cool, you know. Some twinkles.
Are they soft or?
Yeah, they can be. So there used to be a device that was used a lot on electric guitars called an EBO. And it's really cool. It uses like a light and the vibrations to hold the string. You put it a little over the string and it starts going, oh, I think it's down here. And it kind of gives you this ambient, yeah, or it could be straight, your vibrato kind of there, but it's like, it gives you almost like a pad sort of sound on the electric guitar, and it's really fun. But yeah, typically that's going to happen in these worshipful soft moments when it's like, oh, I don't want just a pad player to play, we need a little extra interest, or something like that. Twinkles, I mean, your team's going to make up some words. This is kind of one that my team has made up, you know, saying, yeah, that part just needs some twinkles, you know, or some sparkle. Can you sparkle that up a little bit? And sometimes they don't know what that means, you know, so that's one that you kind of see if your team gels with that. It's like, oh yeah, I know that. The other thing are themes, and this can be in piano world, it can be in synth world, and it can be in electric guitar world. So I call all of those lead lines or themes. Those two words are interchangeable for me. So say on the song that Not Today that we did yesterday, that
opening violin.
the violin player, he was playing the theme or the lead line. Da 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 da. So when I'm writing my chart, I say E.G. theme. He knows. Oh, I better learn that part. Sometimes they'll say E.G. and piano double theme, so they know we're playing this together. Okay, speaking drum. Speaking drum. So important. So the drummer, obviously we talked about, I already did drums. I want to do drums again. What person am I missing? Drums, bass, piano, keys, EG. Oh, acoustic guitar. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but acoustic guitar roll, there's a lot of different kinds of strums that you can do. But a lot of modern songs lean on this down strum. It's just eighth notes. Or they're doing the back and forth on the strings evenly. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And changing through the chords and just being very even. They're not accenting any of the beats, maybe one, but they're trying to be almost like a shaker. And it just adds a little energy. In the recording studio, it's so weird, because like live, you hear acoustic guitar a lot more in the room. The mixer just typically mixes it up a little bit more in most modern settings. In the studio, it's either in the background or sometimes they don't even have it on at all on recordings. But it just adds a little bit of anticipation and energy, and it's tucked away in the mix. I think it's probably because the worship leader is usually the one playing. It's like he's leading sometimes, like, well, turn that up so the band doesn't get lost. That's how they do. You know, congregation hears it. Sometimes, there's a picking part, on the songs. Like, the guitar player does a little bit of arpeggiating too, so you can use those words to help describe. You hear some of the things we do. Do you guys have your charts from yesterday, by chance?
Don't look at me, shake.
Yeah. Kind of make it a little practical here. Not today. So for me, I am very dependent on teaching my chart, or writing my chart just like I would like the song to be done. And a little bit of that is my personality. A little bit of that is I work with professional musicians and I work with volunteers. And so I wanted to write a chart that could speak to both people. And so I found that a chart like this actually does that. And then I hold the hand of my volunteer and I say, you can do this one. And I start showing them the similarities and they pick up on it. But what I do when I'm listening for a song, a deep critical listening like we've all done before, I'm going to take those first 4 bars of the song, and I'm going to listen. I'm going to go, okay, what are the drums doing here? Okay. Now, on this, it's a drum beat that's not normal. And it sounds so thick. And when I think about that, I think of like songs like Thou, O Lord, and Unto the Lamb, All Praise Unto the Lamb by Preston Wood. These big, epic movie score type, like moving. So I think I want epic drums there. So this is me developing my own language to my guys, and they know what I mean because they've had a little bit of experience with me. E.G. theme, that's the main thing I hear. What are the top main things I hear? Thick pad, just engulfing thick. Sometimes my pad player doesn't like to play thick pads, and so I'm like, play thick pads. And then the bass is in there. I'm not telling them exactly what to do at every moment of the song. They got to prepare in some way, but I'm highlighting, hey, we're practicing like maybe the pad player's not playing at the intro. I'm like, hey, right here, look, let's play. So they know as they're looking at the chart, they can listen and go, okay, that's what I'm doing on this part, and now I know I'm in, and maybe there's something important I need to listen to.
Can I ask you a question on notation? Do you always put the bar line in everything you do? Like, if I was looking at, if I see that sharp minor and the slash, do that again, the D, do that again. Mm-hmm. Now, do you always put that bar line? Because a lot of times I don't see the bar line before the A.
Correct. So I do.
Okay.
Because I want to notate when the actual measure starts.
Okay.
There are so many songs where it's like, when do we change this chord?
Yeah. Okay.
And so the straight slash is a bar line. The sideways slash is a beat.
Right.
So F sharp,
That's the first beat.
beat, then there's another F sharp on the second beat, D is the third beat, and then D is the fourth beat. And so I also start the song with a bar line, but you'll notice I don't do it on any of the edges all the way down. And the reason being, just for some reason, it makes my eye a little happier not to have that.
Okay.
So that's a personal decision. I don't do a bar line after, see at the end. If I did, that would notate another measure. So sometimes you're like, oh, I got to close that measure up. No. You
So
do
your
that.
A is going to be
A, the whole
4 beats.
A is 4 beats. Yep, there's nothing after it. So that verse 1, you have acoustic strum, epic drum continues, thick pad and bass. Now acoustic, there's so many words that are really long, so we just found ways. ACX, so we say acoustic. See that second line, so I talked about how every 30 seconds probably, and most of the songs we do, I want something to change. Add EG delay groove. That's kind of the thing that was going on. And I speak those things like that. I hear the themes in my head because I've listened to the recordings 1,000 times. And I hear kind of what it sounds like, what the electric guitar player was doing. So if I mimic that sound in them, it's like, they're like, okay, dial something in. So hopefully they know something about their instrument that they can help you out. Because you don't have to know everything, you just have to know enough to be dangerous. Then chorus there, big diamonds for the band, rising synth. So that's that octave theme. I was bum, bum, bum. And it was created on the synth pad, but yesterday, we don't have any synth players. So I'm like, I want the piano player to do that. Instead of her just going blum with everybody else, she can actually have some movement, and it adds a nice texture to the band. Thick pad and wall of sound. So we were communicating to the guy in the studio. We want it just to be like the hair comes back, on that. Even though we're not playing full out, we want it just to hit you, and it did. It's great. The diamonds, you heard about that earlier, the full duration of whatever chord you're on. If I want a drum fill, sometimes I'm that specific. I hear the drum fill in the recording, I'm like, either do it just like that, or give me something just as amazing. But give me a drum fill on, the end of 3 leading into the next measure. And then sometimes I really want it to be so specific, I'll literally write the rhythms out. And all I've done is I went into Finale, and I made this little rhythm right here, and then I exported it as a graphic, and I put it in a text box, and I put it into this document, and then I moved it around where I want. This chart takes time. It's like 3 or 4 hours per song, but I use a chart all the time, and it doesn't just go click, click, key change like you can do on some of the other things. But so many professional musicians, even visiting musicians and volunteers, have told me about how much they love these charts. I'm like, okay, if we got something going on here, it's worth the sacrifice of time for me. I call the middle sections interludes. Some people call them turns. So that's another terminology. Hey, on that first turn right there, or that's a good. They're probably called turns more than interludes.
I see instrumental, some used for that. Just
Yep.
the term instrumental a little bit.
And this is just my philosophy, so I'm trying to denote between different things. An interlude is like something that's happening pretty quickly before I start singing. Maybe there's a repeated theme of the intro. Typically that's what happens in interlude. An instrumental is going to be a little bit longer and maybe has a solo. That's the way I notate it.
Maybe a whole verse or
Exactly.
8 measure or something like that.
So typically those are called, there's a 4-bar turn after the first chorus. Okay, 4-bar turn. So it's 4 measures, and there's probably some kind of theme going on. Even thinking about the structure of a song, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, but on a big hype song, you're going to have a rockin' full band intro. It's going to come down, some intensity on verse 1. It's either going to rock out on the first chorus or do big diamonds. It's going to lead into another big, interlude that feels like the intro. And sometimes I've said that, interlude, full band, play like intro. And then they go back to the instruction of the intro. The second verse is going to be always a little bit more solid. So I'll tell my drummer, solid verse beat. So in a rock setting, now this song has a little bit of a epic drum thing to it that rhythm carries out in different parts of the drums throughout. So he's doing that while he's doing a solid verse beat. E.g. melodic line. So or the theme, it could have been said the same thing: acoustic strong, thick bass. And then I didn't put anything for the second line of verse 2, because what I know is, and we play with what's called stem files. So we have a click track that then has some extra instrumentation going along with it. So maybe say, on some songs, the synth player has 5 synth parts. Well, he can't cover them all, So on the pad, I've got the things that he's not covering on the track, if you will, and we're playing to a click, and so we're all together, and he's like another part of our band. He's like the 7th member, So on the track, I know right there that next is coming in, so nobody else needs to play. You see the piano octaves at the next chorus. I have them double that synth thing, and then kind of working your way down. Sometimes I get real specific with the drums. Bridge, there it says first line, piano and pad. The second line, add kick hit on beat 1. And what happens in the recording? He just goes. It's adding that little extra bit of intensity. Bass player comes in right there. He knows, oh, I got something going on. And notice how I've cheated it over a little bit on the bar line. That's to notate to him there's a fill. It doesn't just start on it. Everything's intentional. Start building. Look at there. Add tom groove. So he's listened to the recording and he knows, okay, it's not this. It's and he picks up on the E.G. line. And then I say double the intensity. And so I just felt like that's what happened. We're here, we're grooving. It's like, okay, now give me twice that. And I go and have a good time. Sometimes a new groove will happen, and so I try to notate that for the drummer. And by the end of the song, everything's typically big. So like, big, full band, blast it out. I'm tired of telling you exactly what to do, so just rock out. When I'm back and forth on this, but sometimes the same chord will happen and hold over. A lot of times, I used to be really good about drawing lines. I have a little line drawing tool and tying them all together. Now I just explain it in rehearsal. It takes so long. So we'll hit that A chord and we'll hold it out for those 4 bars. The drums are still going because I told them to keep going. And then I got a lot of instruction here. Big drum fill, guitar / bass slide, full band groove. Here we go to the end of the song. And then you see we have repeats as well.
Is this bass slide, is that, you're going, is that coming down?
So, my hope is that he's listened to the recording.
Okay.
Yes, on this one it was.
Oh, and land.
Yep, landing right on that downbeat there. So it looks a lot like me, and this isn't supposed to be down here, I just got messed up, so. And there's not a B sharp on the first verse. Wrong chord. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes. So the repeats, all those things, there's a font called Maestro that you can have in Word. And so I'll make a text box, and you can have, there's shortcuts that teach you how to write the song spelling. That's actually not Maestro. That's actually 2 lines and a colon. But the diamonds are Maestro, and that might be the only thing.
So what did you use? Did you use Maestro for all of this?
So I use capitals, which is a font that I love. It's just real bold for the title and for the intro and all the subheadings. For the words, you could pick whatever font you like, but I use, I think it's Cambria, or one of those C words. And I have a Mac too.
Yeah.
So I think that if everybody could get a Mac, the world would be a better place. And then I use maestro.
What has the diamonds in it?
That's maestro.
Okay.
I believe it's shift and your backslash. Shift backslash will give you a diamond.
And I apologize, but
No, you're good.
how you got the notes into this from Finale?
Yeah. So I made a measure in Finale, and you notice how it has one line. So you can actually, I believe, right-click on that measure that you've created,
Okay.
and you can pick the different bar lines that you would want. And so I picked, I can't remember what exact setting it is. I can actually find it after class if you want me to.
No, that's okay.
And I put it to one bar line because I don't want all 5 bar lines when I'm just doing the rhythm.
Right.
Because then it looks like notes. And I'm like, no, it may not be
Right.
a beat, you know. And you can do the notation where it's like not slash notation. It's rhythmic notation
Yeah.
if you want it. So then I'll take that and then you can do export a graphic. So you kind of do a double click and a little thing opens up and you have to put your little box just around what you want.
Okay.
And then you go to export. I think it's one of the settings up top. And you go down to export graphic. And then it'll ask you, do you want to export this? And all of a sudden it makes it a little JPEG. I save it on my desktop. And then I create a text box inside the Microsoft Word document. And sometimes it's a little tricky, but you got to aim it and drag it right into the text box. And more than likely it's going to go and blow it up really big.
Yeah.
You're like, how do you want to do that? So then you size it up the way you want it. And then you get real good with your mouse and you click on the text box, not the JPEG. If you start trying to move the JPEG, you're moving it out of the text box. Grab the text box, and then you can move it, and there's actually a shortcut if you're using your mouse. I believe it's either the option button or the command button. It gives you the smaller passive. Instead of it moving and guessing where you want it to, it gives you exact placement ability. So you see the 4-4 up top too? I create that in text boxes as well. I put 2 text boxes together, put them on top of each other, and then people know it's 4-4, 6-8, 2-4. All right, I've talked for like a really long time and haven't given you a chance to ask any questions. So, what questions do you have?
Where do you see things going, trends, what should we be looking for?
Yeah. So, the edgiest things that are happening right now I see them in the 80s. I mean, like, all of the Hillsong Young and Free and some of these guys are doing sort of like a European dance sort of sounds. I don't know if those are going to make their wave, into this big like mass change of what's going on in music. There's another wave of like Bethel Church, and there's just these very free, back to the basics, almost band-wise, where it's like that rhythm section. So, in my personal opinion, I don't see the rhythm section of a band going away. They've been here for a long time. I mean, even in the 20s when we had big band, you still have bass player, electric guitar player, drums, piano player. And so that's going to be the foundation, more than likely, of what you're going to see in most places. I maybe see these younger musicians, they, as they get better, they want to add more. I could see, horns coming back for a little bit. I could see lots of strings, cello, bass, string quartets. I could see them experimenting. This is just my personal opinion, but I'm trying to inspire my 26-year-old millennial associate. Over Christmas, he's never led a choir before. So I said, this song, why don't you lead the choir? And I sat there and I went and sang in the choir, or I played the acoustic for him, and he started leading it. So the guy who's going to be the most successful and have the longest career in worship music is the triple threat guy. Can he lead a choir? Even if he can't lead an orchestra, can he at least, fake it till he makes it? Can he play the guitar? Can he lead from the microphone? Can he inspire people? That guy is going to be a precious commodity because, people talk about choirs are going away. Choirs are not going to go away, in my opinion. They're not going away at my church.
What's the role of the choir in what you're doing?
Yep. So the role of the choir for us is kind of twofold. It's a landing spot for a lot of people who want to be involved in worship ministry. But secondly, I call them that they are a picture, an image of what we want the congregation to know they have the freedom to do. So everybody on the platform sets the boundaries for the congregation. You can come to a church, if you're brand new, you're walking in the door, you're looking up. If everybody on the platform is engaged and all in, you're thinking, okay, this is allowed here. Now, I like it for it to happen. I'm being very philosophical. I like it for it to happen in different personalities of people. If everybody is this guy, which that's kind of me, you know, that's great if that's their personality. But if it's not who they are, then it can be an inauthentic. And all the radars are up for what's authentic, what's inauthentic, you know. I've got a 76-year-old guy in my choir, and it's like there's a massive TV in his hand that he can't get it up. But there are moments in worship when I see him back there, he's just loving Jesus. I'm like, that's how that guy is loving Jesus. And there's some 75-year-old over here that's going, wow, if he's doing that, then man, I want to do that. And then he's standing next to, a lot of times we'll have our student ensembles join in with our choir. He's standing next to this 15-year-old kid who's just loving Jesus with his heart. And he's dressed like a 15-year-old kid. And he's dressed, you know, in his khaki pants and polo like a 75-year-old man. And all those kind of things are encouraging to the church to move. So the choir for me is a picture of the congregation. They're, you know, number one, worship leaders. But in my church, we also do some special music because I feel like there are some things that the choir can do and needs to do. If anybody has this greater ability, maybe a soloist, or if you have a mass group of people that can flex a little bit more, God gave you these muscles to use. So if we never use these muscles of, you know, presenting a message, and that's what special musics are. They're testimonials. They're preaching, you know, a message beyond just a song. And sometimes it turns into a both and. You know, you're starting to sing that song. You get to that first chorus, and somebody's like, I can't sing it anymore, and they start to jump up and start singing. It's like, come on with it. So, but yeah, that's kind of the main role for the choir for us. Yeah, they're the highlight. You know, we want people to know if you're going to be involved in worship ministry, well, your starting place is the choir. And then from that, we pull out people who can be on the praise team and things like that.
How many are on your praise team, the singers?
So I typically run with 4 on a Sunday morning. 2 altos, two tenors. A lot of times, because the songs are a little higher in range, I have the tenors sing what I would affectionately title the soprano harmony. And I would have the altos sing the alto harmony. Now really, the altos are singing like what the tenors would do, kind of that third. But since it's a little higher, I don't want my tenors singing A's and B flats. I mean, they can't, you know. And so then the guys take over that almost baritone sort of feel in their voice on certain songs. On other songs, they're singing their true tenor, they're singing the true alto. Other people will add 2 other people, 2 sopranos. And I'm not a huge fan if I just have 2 guys of us all singing unison together a lot, because for some reason it's just really hard, unless you're really focused on practicing, to get guys to sing in unison and it sound not like this. Girls are better at it, which have like a softer presence in their voice. So.
And do you rotate those people, or do you have the same people most of the time?
Rotate. I try to involve with a lot of people. I try to involve students all the time. If there's a student that has any kind of gift of leadership, vocally or even instrumentally, and I've got 2 or 3 of them over at the worship lab, they're up on the platform and they're leading right beside me, and I'm telling everybody, guys, we are so blessed to have this 15-year-old young lady lead us on this next song, and it's encouraging them, and then it's, again, there's people all over the congregation, all different ages, like, hey, there is hope for the future, because that person is loving Jesus and